He walked up to the podium and paused. Everyone in this high-security town knew what he was about to say, and everyone could see he didn't want to say it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He couldn't find how to start to explain what had happened that should never have happened. Then it was silent.
I'm sorry to announce that we have had a tragedy here in our tight-knit community, Redwood. Some of you may have heard of this horrific event that unfortunately took place.
He paused to fight back tears as he continued.
2 young children who attended the local middle school were brutally murdered. The third child, Cassie, is in a coma.
He had been looking at the townsfolk who have gathered for the emergency meeting in the city hall, but now he directs his attention to the camera pointed at him and looks deep into its lens as if looking straight at the viewers watching.
Everyone has been affected, not just the children or the family members. This has changed how people look at Redwood. We are no longer known as the safest town in the country, and our reputation is destroyed, along with our town pride.
The chief of police lets the tears fall shamelessly now, looking out into the audience as they do the same, then walks abruptly off the stage. Her face was dripping with beads of sweat. Her face was red with exhaustion, as if she had been fighting a monster. I shook her lightly, waking her from whatever evil had consumed her dream. She bolted straight up, gasping for air, looking at me with panic in her eyes. Then Cassie said, "Mom, you scared me." So I told her, "I'm sorry, Cassie. If you were having a horrid nightmare." I reached for Cassie's forehead, and my hand instantly became hot at the touch. "Cass, you're burning up. Maybe you shouldn't go to school today." But she replied, "No, I have my big social studies test today. I can't miss it." So I said, "All right, Cass, if you're sure. Either way, you're going to be late. I'll drive you to school." Then I walked out. She always did love social studies.
Tears filled Cassie's mom's eyes as a faint smile grasped her lips as she thought about what a good child Cassie was. Her chin started quivering and her thumbs fiddled, trying to keep her mind off the state her daughter was in. The police officer who was questioning her looked away, his eyes getting a little watery. He cleared his throat and said, "Thank you, Miss Jefferson. We appreciate you telling us your side of the morning the event happened. We're trying our very best to figure out who did this."
They were talking to me. I could hear them. I could feel their presence, but I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. I heard the machine next to my bed that was managing my heartbeat keep its steady pace, reminding me that I was still alive. It was as if I had come to visit myself. I saw my body lying on the hospital bed, except it was the horrible version of myself. I was pale. There was tubes hooked up to me and people around me crying. There were flowers everywhere, almost like I was at my own funeral. It all came to me in a flash. I remembered. Well, I remembered some of it. The bell finally sounded. Thank goodness. I don't know how much more social studies I could take. First off, the test was fairly easy, but those darn multiple choice get me every time. Second off, I got a detention for being late to school. I can't believe my mom got pulled over for speeding. Again. I grabbed all my books and joined the sea of children walking toward their locker.
"Cassie!"
I laughed as my best friend linked arms with me and continued.
"So, I heard you got detention. Finally living life how I do. The dangerous side. I see."
I laughed. Emily had detention every day since the beginning of the quarter. Emily's always getting in trouble. It's not that she's dumb. In fact, she's practically one of the smartest kids in the grade, which gets irritating. How hard I have to work for my grades while she's naturally intelligent, but refuses to use her gift. Instead, she goofs off and bugs the teachers.
"We can go to detention together. It's going to be so much fun. Ms. Wilson always leaves detention to go run errands, then comes back. So basically, we just mess around."
Sounds fun. I nod, barely listening to her as I'm rummaging in my locker for any homework I can do during detention. I finally gather my folders and walk down the hall to Mrs. Wilson's room. Emily's still talking. She never quits. Once we walk in, we both gasp. There, sitting in the middlemost desk, sits Tommy. Tommy is my only other best friend. He's the kind of friend that has his entire life planned out. He knows that he wants to go to Harvard, and he knows he wants to become a lawyer. We run up to him and frantically both start asking why he's in detention.
I don't want to talk about it.
He whispers as if just the memory brings back agony. We drop the subject once we realize his red puffy eyes, which no doubt have been from crying.
Basic rules of detention. Don't leave the room. Don't talk. Just sit and do your homework. I have to go run some errands quickly. No need to tell anyone about me leaving. I'll be gone for only a few minutes.
Miss Wilson says to us as she grabs her bag and leaves. She inhales deeply, only to start sobbing again.
If I could take it back, I would. I didn't know they were still in the school. I promise. After I came back in the classroom, they were all gone, and so was their stuff. I just assumed they had cut detention. But it's not like I could tell anybody. If I did, then they would ask why I wasn't there to supervise, and I'd have to explain how I was running errands. I'd be fired. After I saw they were gone, I went to the office and typed in the security code to lock all the doors and windows. Once I lock all of them, I have 1 minute to get out of the school before they lock. Once locked, no one can get in or out. I locked it and then hurriedly scurried out of the school. I didn't know they were still trapped. I didn't know that I just accidentally killed 2 wonderful children and I put the other one in grave danger. I'm so sorry.
With that, Miss Wilson lets out the most agonizing sob and completely collapses her head into her hands. The police officer walked over from his side of the table over to hers and embraced her in a comforting hug, even though it was against protocol. He thought this might be one exception.
No one blames you. You didn't know.
The police officer whispers, all the while thinking to himself, what could have been if only the teacher would have not run her errands. Oh my goodness, I actually cut detention with Tommy and Emily. Emily convincing me to ditch was the easy part. Us convincing Tommy was the harder part. He finally caved after Miss Wilson was gone for 45 minutes. The first place we went was the gym. We ran around like maniacs, started dancing, and then after we were all tuckered out, sat down in the middle and laid down on our backs. Everything was so peaceful. All I could hear was the inhaling and exhaling of breath. Slowly, I dozed off.
3, 2, 1.
I bolted straight up. This can't be happening. I looked frantically at Emily and Tommy. They just stared at me, horror blazing through their face. I stood up as fast as my legs would allow me and sprinted towards the gym door. Hearing Emily and Tommy's footsteps pitter-patter behind me, I swung the door open and raced towards the nearest exit. Down the hall we ran, as fast as we could. I turned the corner. No, this can't be happening. My brain went on shock mode. I could just stand there, staring at the triple locked door in front of me. Try another door, my head told me. I raced off straight down the hall towards the next door. The closer I got to the door, the farther my encouragement to be let free dwindled down. I stopped once I had a clear view of the door. It was locked. We were locked in. Tears swelled up in my eyes. I turned to face Emily and Tommy. Tommy was in the same state I was. Tears, so close to brim of falling, and a pale face. Emily stood there, her eyes bulged out at us.
Are you guys actually close to crying?
Emily replied, a hint of laughter in her voice.
My gosh, get a grip. We spend the night in here, then we'll just tell the teachers what happened as soon as they arrive here in the morning. No harm done.
She's right, I said, agreeing with Emily, shaking all of my fears to the side. Tommy nodded, his head slightly, his face returning to its normal color. We all stood there awkwardly for a second or two, not really knowing what to do.
Guys, I think we should go to the locker room and shower, so we're ready for school tomorrow.
Tommy said to us.
I'm not going to shower with you,
Emily said, clearly revolted by the thought.
Obviously, I would go to the boys' locker room, and you would go to the girls'.
Tommy screamed. All right, now that's cleared up. I'm going to go start scrubbing, I said with a laugh.
I have my loofah in my backpack,
Tommy said, racing towards his locker. Emily and I just stared at each other and then burst out laughing. Emily and I creeped into the locker room. We went to our gym lockers and got our shampoo, conditioner, and soap we have. We also grabbed our gym uniform to change into after the showers. Emily went to go turn on the showers so they're hot by the time we get in. We changed into our bathrobes that we conveniently kept there. We walked into our own individual shower and started the process of shampooing our hair. All of a sudden, we hear a twig snap. Em, did you hear that?
Yeah, what was that?
Emily replied. I opened the curtain separating me from the open shower room. At first, my gaze went to the medium hole in the wall. Nothing new, it had always been there, just usually covered with a piece of plywood. Next, my gaze landed on the demented human-type figure crawling out of it. Emily, run! I screamed, as loud as my voice could carry. Em sprints out of her shower, and we grab our robes. our heart pounding as we tried to race away, realizing we were no longer alone in the school. We go towards the entrance of the locker room and see a little girl staring back at us. She's wearing a skirt with pink flowers on it and a shirt that read, Redwood Institute for the Mentally Insane. We froze. The mental hospital was located right behind the school. Are mental patients trapping us in the locker room? We both knew the answer.
You have no exit. You have no exit. You have no exit.
The little girl whispered, chanting to us, as more mental patients gathered around her joining in the chant. I grabbed Emily's arm and pulled her, while sprinting as fast as I could towards the boys' locker room door. I swung the door open and slammed it behind us. Immediately, you could smell the stench of never-been-washed boys' uniforms. The next thing that came to us was Tommy's voice screaming for help. We raced around the corner of the locker rooms to see Tommy being dragged down a different tunnel by a bearded man wearing the same shirt as the little girl and the other mental patients. We looked at each other with tears about to fall, realizing we might have the same fate as Tommy. I felt a finger run across the back of my neck, hoping to God it was Emily standing next to me, but realizing she was crying in both of her hands. All of a sudden I guessed my own fate as I heard a whisper in my ear.
Please stop running away, little girl. Haven't you realized you have no exit?